It feels like there's a big shift going on in the discussion around our schools right now. Part of it's what's been happening within the union, certainly. The members of the Chicago Teachers Union, recently we saw CTU members authorize a strike. We had a march downtown of many thousands of our members, numerous big mobilizations that showed teachers and parents, the union and the community working together to fight for real changes in the schools. But it really spilled beyond just our members. I think, we've seen parents out fighting for not just a longer school day, but a better school day. We've seen huge mobilizations of parents and community members against school closings, against turnarounds, for an elected school board. I think the community is becoming galvanized around these issues. Part of it is supporting the union as we're heading up to a possible strike, but I think it goes a lot further than that.
One more point. The negotiations between the Board of Education and the teachers, PSRPs, and frankly members of the community and parents have been characterized by the board trying to dictate every term, have been characterized by a list of demands that we understand will be the death of public education as we know it. It will involve gutting our contract. It would involve a 7-hour and 40-minute long teacher day with no provisions for art or music or the things that make school enriching or pleasurable. It would involve casting aside experience, casting aside those resources that we invested in the schools, and handing them over to private operators. We have met that attack with wide-scale vocal opposition. We have met that attack arm in arm with our partners in the community. We've occupied schools, we have marched, we have spoken out, we've filled auditoriums, we've filled streets, and yes, we have voted to authorize a strike. It is not the work of the people at the negotiating table which has produced gains. It is the work of everybody here who's been in the streets, who's spoken up, who's made their voices loud so that we cannot be ignored. That, and that alone, is what's caused the political powers that be and the board to climb out of their bulldozer, because that's the way they've approached these negotiations, with a bulldozer. And they can no longer bulldoze us, and so now they want to talk to us. That's all right. We'll talk because we want a fair settlement to the problems that face our schools. But we should be under no illusions. We should be under no illusions that the tiger has changed his stripes.
All right.
That the powers that be truly care about public education and the people it serves. We do that. That's our job. And we're going to keep fighting for what's right. What we have now done is secured two things which are critical to us. A promise that the board will do some hiring for art, for music, for physical education. It's not enough. We want some counselors too. We want to know why one counselor to 1,100 students, 1960, we want to know why that's okay. We want to know why they're closing our schools in our neighborhoods. We want to know why they're trying to staff our schools with volunteers, college students, and why they can't hire PSRPs and people who do that for a living who are from that community. We're not giving up that fight for any of those things. But we recognize that this is a step in the right direction. And we recognize that for the first time, the board has recognized that it will hire for those positions from the ranks of our displaced members. Who lost their jobs due to no fault of their own. And this is the board that has spent literally millions of dollars fighting that exact proposition. This is a board that has said no, it's against their principles, it'll hurt children to hire good educators, never had a bad job evaluation in life. 25 years of service in a West Side school or a South Side school closed down before the altar of profit. And now they're the ones to blame. So they have to rehire those folks. It's a step in the right direction. But we're not done with this fight. Ultimately, we got a contract to settle, and even then we're not done with this fight. We're not done with this fight until we get educational justice in the city of Chicago, in this country, and for everyone who depends on public schools. Thank you, sister brothers.
Today's demonstration and why people are out in such force today is in opposition to the Board of Education, attempting to pass their budget. They've actually backed off of that today, but people are out here saying, you know, we want to actually have a fair budget, that the CPS Board, the Board of Education, negotiate a fair contract, that recall rights of laid-off teachers actually are considered, and that also all the school-related issues, meaning the in-school issues, things about class size. Teachers sometimes teach anywhere between 30 and 40 students, that some schools don't have libraries, they don't have air conditioning, they don't have people to teach art, music, and physical education classes, that those actually are taken up within the negotiations. We're here to actually raise those issues because according to State Bill 7, which was passed last year, they can't be brought up in negotiations between CPS and the CTU. So we as the community are here in support of that, and we want to raise those because we want better schools for our children and we want a fair contract for the teachers.
Parents and teachers side by side, lives and truths cannot divide. Parents and teachers side by side.
All schools deserve certified art teachers paid for by the board, not discretionary money.
We know we need arts, right? We need music, right? All of these things make a whole child. At this time, we're going to have Ray Wall to come in and talk a little bit more about that.
I've been teaching for 18 years, and all those 18 years, the Board of Education only funded me half position because they don't believe in funding fully funded arts and music in our schools. That has to change, right? I'm wearing a cap and gown because my proudest day each year as I see students graduate and I tell them, you are lifelong learners, as I am. We all are. We're lifelong learners. They must respect that and hire back those experienced, certified, highly qualified teachers first. I represent the 80 schools right now that do not have art or music. It's not an arts desert, it's an educational desert. Shame on you, board. Fund the arts. I represent the 160 schools without a library. All the half-time PE teachers. Can you imagine why our children need to exercise and get out in fresh air? We need sports. I represent all the computer teachers who are half-time. Our school does not have one. Chicago, CPS, fund a quality school day. Thank you.
There was an over 90% strike authorization vote that the teachers were able to get from their membership because teachers are very angry, they want a good contract. That on top of the fact finders report which came out last week, in which the arbitrator actually basically recommended that teachers actually be paid anywhere between 15 and 20%, which is well above what CPS wanted to offer teachers, which was in the low single digits. So I think this is a move that they feel a lot of pressure, that they need to negotiate. And, we're going into an election year, and there could be a large strike here in any number of, weeks, and I don't think CPS wants that. I am a member of the Chicago Teacher Solidarity Campaign. It's a group that started about 5 to 6 weeks ago. We're a group of about, anywhere between 50 to 100 people have been coming to meetings over the last 5 weeks. Community members, unions. I'm in the nurses union. Students, parents, people from all wide spectrums across the city are actively building solidarity with the teachers because we believe that the struggle not only to defend the teachers but to defend better schools is absolutely important in this city. And that the teachers
We We are here because we support the Chicago Teachers Union in their efforts to reform and improve our system.
The mayor and the board continue with this budget and with every board meeting to demonstrate they have no interest in treating parents, teachers, and the teachers union as partners, as collaborators. They continue to demonstrate that they are intent on privatizing education by increasing charter school funding another 17%, with the primary intent of eliminating the union and leaving teachers with no voice and no power. Everything is dictated from the top, with show hearings called on short notice that will, as always, result in a unanimous vote by the mayor's hand-picked board.
So on July 11th, the Board of Education held hearings on their new proposed budget. We were very concerned about these budget hearings. CPS is at a point right now where releasing a new budget is something they should be taking pretty seriously. We've got cuts in the schools, we've got losses of programs that students need, social services that they need access to, school closings, more parent protests than we've seen in years, and tens of thousands of employees threatening to go out on strike. You would think the budget would be something that they would sort of want to build some support for. And instead, they released their new budget and gave the public less than a week's notice over the 4th of July holiday to attend budget hearings, rather than holding 3 hearings on different dates and giving people lots of notice. The hearings were all on the same date with very little notice or attention having been given to the public.
The mayor and the board, in their treatment of parents, teachers, and their union, have taken a baseball bat to a hornet's nest. A May poll reported by the Tribune showed that among public school parents, 48% sided with the teachers union and 18% sided with the mayor. We in the Chicago Teachers Solidarity Campaign, you see all the activists behind you that are just a fraction of the people involved in this. We intend to send hundreds of activists across this city in the next 2 months to build even stronger support for the Chicago Teachers Union, for teachers, for parents' voice, as the union fights to defend public education and fights for the best possible education for every student in this city.
The 3 locations where these hearings were held were Kennedy King, Malcolm X College, and Daly College. There was no hearing organized on the north side of the city, which brought protests from parents up there. Outside of Malcolm X, the Chicago Teachers Solidarity Campaign, a group that's been organizing, supporting our contract fight and the fight for our schools across the city, held a press conference announcing their organization and their support for the CTU and their concerns about this budget that CPS had just released.
It's evident in CPS's proposed budget for the next school year that the board continues to ignore the concerns and needs of parents, students, and teachers of the city of Chicago. The board is increasing the school day and the school year, yet this budget does not allocate any money funding to art, music, PE, world language, and computer literacy positions. In fact, this budget has 182 fewer teaching positions than last year.
We stand in solidarity with CTU and very much understand the challenges that they're now facing in negotiating with this administration for a fair contract. We're very excited about the creation of the Chicago Teachers Solidarity Campaign. I think this kind of community support really shows that what the teachers care about, what community residents care about, is improving things for the children in this city, and not just some of the children, but all of the children who rely on CPS for their education.
We are here today to let the public know that the nurses stand in solidarity with the Chicago teachers. We oppose this budget because this budget is pitting charter schools against public schools. And we have concerns with that. We think all children should have equal right access to a school close to their homes. We are concerned that when they shut down these public schools in the neighborhoods, that the children will have to take 2 to 3 buses to another school, and that they will be harmed and injured. Crime is increased in Chicago, and we are concerned about that.
We come out here today to let everyone know that we stand in absolute solidarity with the Chicago Teachers Union in their ongoing struggle for a decent contract. We have many of our members that have children in the Chicago Public Schools. I myself have 3 children in Chicago Public Schools, with 2 more on the way. In a couple of years, I will have 5 in the Chicago Public Schools. As public workers, we trust our fellow public servant workers, the teachers, and the other people that work at these schools to make the right decisions on behalf of our children. Teachers need to be involved in all of the decisions at the schools regarding curriculum, class size, as well as the length of the school day. Teachers should be respected, involved in the process, and well compensated by the Board of Education.
The Chicago Teacher Solidarity Campaign, after they held their press conference, they entered the hearing to participate and speak out with the community.
We're going to present 2 budgets this evening. The first on our operating funds, so there's 2 different budgets that we have to prepare every year. First, our operating funds that reflects our day-to-day costs.
All sorts of different neighborhoods. We have actually written out a statement, some thoughts we have about why we oppose this budget. Folks should have gotten a flyer with this on it, and if you agree with us, I hope you'll help me in making this statement to the board. What we say is, what's happening to our schools is an injustice and a shame. 160 schools in this city lack libraries. Almost all of them are on the south and west sides. 42% of elementary schools don't have full funding for full-time music and art teachers. Charter schools get resources, while public schools are slashed. You tell us we have a deficit of $700 million, so we can't pay teachers or improve the schools. Our kids will be in for an even longer school day. But Illinois is not broke. $250 million in TIF money is taken out of our schools each year to fund the projects of the wealthy, like the $5 million Patty Pritzker just got to build another hotel. Corporate America doesn't pay their fair share, and our teachers pay with their jobs. And the Board of Education has shown time and time again their primary concern is not the children or the teachers, but the pocketbooks of the rich. Here's your chance to do what's right. Support our teachers and stand for quality public education. The bottom line is that millionaires and billionaires on the board don't care about working families or our schools, but we do. We stand in solidarity with the Chicago Teachers Union because we are parents, we are students, we are the community, and we will never bow down to the interests of the 1%. Union busing is disgusting.
TIF funds do take money out of the property taxes, and then they do get redistributed sometimes to the schools. That's true. We are the only district in the state of Illinois that the TIF Commission does not include someone from the Board of Education on that fund. So what we have is a TIF Commission full of real estate developers and other business people. I'm not against them. But we're the only district in the state that does not have a Board of Education person on the TIF Commission. What this means is that the TIF Commission is making decisions that impact, because they take money from property taxes, and again, they do return some of it to the schools, that's true, but they don't return all of it. And you understand that property taxes fund schools. I think we all understand that. Everybody understands that in the state of Illinois, except the city of Chicago. Everybody else in the state of Illinois that has TIF funds has on its board a Board of Education, its TIF Commission, a Board of Education member. This is the only district that does not.
So you said you were going to speak and wanted just so you could just read almost any section out of here. It's
unfortunate that there aren't more folks here. You guys said that you need continued input from parents in the community up on this board, and when you give less than 1 week notice over a holiday for community forums on a document as complicated as the budget, it does not.
At Kennedy King, the budget hearing that I attended, I spoke to the hearing officers about TIF money, They had been going through the budget, talking on and on about the difficulties of the budget this year, and claimed that they had used every means possible, every tool at their disposal to try to save money for the schools. And while we saw lots of ways that they saved through cuts from the staff, cutting pay and benefits, cutting additional staff positions, we saw cuts that students were going to suffer from. I'm a CPS parent, and we're walking into another school year where my child's school is likely to lose a full-time art teacher. Lots of cuts from all of us. What I didn't hear them talking about was how they were going to fight for resources for the schools from the business community that's running away with so much of it.
Here's my question. You said that you've used every tool available, including raising revenue, and I find that perplexing. I know that you've raised revenue by increasing property taxes on all of us. And I know that you cut expenses by going after the pay of the teachers and paraprofessionals. And I know that you told me as a parent that I'm going to have to be okay with not getting additional funding for arts and music and smaller classes. What I haven't seen is, we thanked the city up on this presentation. We thanked the city for providing some TIF money. And what that doesn't acknowledge is that that was money that came out of the budget in the first place. $80 million coming back to the schools versus, I'm not a math teacher, but $80 million coming back to the schools versus $250 million a year coming out of the schools. We're coming out behind on that one.
I was especially flabbergasted to see them start bragging about having brought some TIF money into the schools. They talked about a new $30 million that the city was giving them. This is on top of some other TIF money that they were taking credit for a total of $80 million in TIF money that they had brought in to help fund CPS. What they neglected to mention was that completely ignores $250 million a year being taken out of the schools to feed the TIF funds. That hundreds of millions of dollars that show up on my property taxes and yours saying that they are funding our children's public schools are actually being diverted into the tax increment financing funds. And these TIF funds are then overwhelmingly being spent on some of the wealthiest people in the city, being spent on huge downtown developers. The majority of this money is actually not being spent in blighted communities to create jobs like they claim, but in fact the majority is being spent in the Loop or the Gold Coast.
I know that the board doesn't control those TIF funds, but neither do I, and I know I've done a lot to protest against them.
CPS tells us they're not in charge of that money, that they don't control that's sort of established by the city council and others, but I don't control it either, and that's what I told them. I mean, I've been out protesting against TIF funds being stolen from our students, on a monthly basis over the last few years. And in fact, we've been able to, protest against $15 million almost going to the Chicago Mercantile Exchange and the Chicago Board of Trade. This is money, again, that should have went to our schools, instead going to one of the most profitable companies in the state of Illinois. The former head of the Chicago Board of Trade, his new job is he's the president of the Board of Education, David Vitale, who was there at the same hearing with me at Kennedy King. The Board of Trade is owned by the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. One of their former board members is the mayor of the city of Chicago. We now have Penny Pritzker sitting on the Board of Education, the billionaire heiress of the Hyatt fortune. Hyatt hotels have just received another almost $6 million TIF grant to construct a new hotel here in the city of Chicago at the same time that an international boycott has been called of this hotel chain. So, their own dealings with the business community and their own business interests seem to just put them in a position of not deciding to put the students first, but instead to put the business community first.
So I would like to know, since you've used every tool available, what has the board and CPS administrators done when a new TIF agreement was just proposed, giving tens of millions to develop a new downtown skyscraper, money that comes out of our school budgets? What did you do to oppose this, to protest against it, to lobby against it? Please tell us.
They replied by once again bragging that they had brought some TIF money into the schools and patting themselves on the back for that. It didn't answer our question at all, which is what are they doing to stop the bleeding of money into the TIF funds? What are they doing to say no, our schools can't afford to lose hundreds of millions of dollars a year? I believe that the Board of Education and the mayor and a lot of their allies have really exposed themselves to some extent that this isn't just about what's best for our kids on their end. It's about making decisions that are best for a real political viewpoint that they've got, a belief in privatization, a belief in union busting, a belief that, you know, well-funded millionaire experts controlling the Board of Education from downtown somehow know better than, you know, people of color, low-income workers, folks in our communities, that we don't deserve an actual say in the running of our schools.